Hashtag the departure of humans signaled doom for the Galactic Council. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council stretched beyond what most species could comprehend. Crystalline walls rose into infinity, their surfaces reflecting the bioluminescent patterns of 1,000 different alien forms. Representative Zektar of the Vorthak Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes nervously as he watched the human delegation prepare for their final address. For 3 centuries, the humans have been the backbone of galactic civilization. Their peculiar ability to solve impossible problems, to find solutions where none existed, have become legendary across the spiral arms. When the crystalline plague threatened to wipe out the silicon-based Nexary, it was human scientists who developed the quantum phase treatment. When the Void Hunters emerged from dark space to terrorize shipping lanes, human military tacticians crafted the strategies that drove them back into the abyss. Now, Ambassador Sarah Chun stood at the central podium, her weathered face bearing the weight of countless diplomatic victories. The translator nodes hummed softly as her words reached every corner of the vast chamber, carrying to representatives from over 10,000 species. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to announce. After careful deliberation, the United Earth Federation has decided to withdraw from the Galactic Council effective immediately. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the ever-chattering Pixari fell silent, their normally melodic voices stilled by shock. Chancellor Mordun of the Hegemony, a towering insectoid whose species had ruled the galaxy before humans arrived, clicked his mandibles in disbelief. "This is madness," Mordun's synthesized voice boomed across the chamber. "Humans cannot simply abandon their responsibilities." Patel, whose terraforming innovations had created homes for billions of refugees. Engineer Rodriguez, whose hyperspace theories had revolutionized galactic travel. "Our decision is final," Sarah replied. "For too long, this council has relied on humanity to solve every crisis, to bear every burden, to sacrifice our own progress for the greater good. We have given everything, and in return, we have watched as other species grew complacent, expecting us to clean up their messes while they prospered." The Zephyrian representative, a gaseous being contained within an environmental suit, pulsed with agitated colors. "The humans speak of sacrifice, but they have gained much from their service. Technology, resources, territory. Territory we earned through blood and ingenuity." Admiral Jackson stepped forward, his scarred hands clasped behind his back. "Every system under human protection was won through conflict you were too afraid to engage in. Every technological breakthrough we shared freely, asking for nothing in return except the promise of mutual cooperation." Dr. Vexhai of the Mentari Collective, beings of pure thought energy, projected her consciousness into the debate. "The humans cannot deny that their association with the Council has elevated their species beyond primitive origins. Without our guidance, Earth would still be a single-world civilization." Sarah's laugh was bitter, echoing through the vast chamber. "Guidance? Your guidance consisted of warning us about every threat while expecting us to handle it ourselves. When the Devourers consumed the Outer Rim, where were the mighty Mentari? When pirates raided the trade routes, where were the proud Vorthak fleets? You guided us, yes, guided us to become your unpaid military force." Representative Clix of the Quantum Syndicate phased partially into reality, his form shimmering between dimensions. "The humans exaggerate their contributions. The galaxy functioned for millions of years before their arrival." "Barely," Sarah shot back. "Your own historical records show the constant cycle of wars, plagues, and collapses that plague this galaxy. In 300 years of human membership, how many galaxy-threatening crises have we prevented? How many extinct species have we saved through our intervention?" The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, translation systems struggling to keep up with the multitude of languages and communication methods. Some delegates argued for compromise, others hurled accusations, while many simply sat in stunned silence. Chancellor Mordun raised his primary arm, calling for order. "Even if we accept that humans have been disproportionately active in crisis resolution, surely we can reach an accommodation. Perhaps reduced responsibilities, better resource allocation." "It's too late for that." Sarah's voice cut through the noise like a blade. The decision was made after careful analysis of our relationship with this council. For every crisis we've solved, 3 more have emerged because other species knew we would handle them. For every breakthrough we've shared, others have hoarded their discoveries. This council has become a parasite, feeding on human innovation and sacrifice while giving nothing in return. Dr. Keth Moore of the Academic Collective, a crystalline being whose species prided itself on logic, projected statistical holograms into the air. Analysis confirms disproportionate human contribution to crisis resolution. 73.2% of military interventions, 68.9% of scientific breakthroughs, 81.4% of diplomatic solutions. However, humans represent only 0.03% of galactic population. The statistics hung in the air like an accusation. Even the most ardent human critics couldn't dispute the cold mathematics of 3 centuries of service. Sarah nodded grimly. Dr. Keth Moore's analysis confirms what we've long suspected. We've become the galaxy's problem solvers while everyone else has become complacent. When was the last time the hegemony developed new technology instead of waiting for humans to innovate? When did the collective last propose a solution instead of analyzing human proposals? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Elder Sci-Fi of the Ancient One spoke, her voice carrying the weight of eons. The humans raise valid concerns. Perhaps reforms. No, Sarah's voice was final. We've tried reforms. We've proposed councils, committees, shared responsibility initiatives. Each time, the burden inevitably falls back on humanity. We're done being the galaxy's caretakers. Admiral Jackson activated a holographic display showing human colonies throughout the galaxy. Effective immediately, all human military forces are withdrawing to Earth-controlled space. Our protection fleets are returning home. Our intervention forces are standing down. Dr. Patel stepped forward, her voice tinged with sadness. All terraforming projects will be suspended. Medical aid missions will conclude within the standard month. Scientific exchange programs are terminated. Engineer Rodriguez added, hyperspace beacon networks will transition to local control. Technology sharing agreements are void. All human infrastructure will be either transferred to local authorities or deactivated. The implications hit the assembly like a shockwave. The Pixari delegation began a high-pitched keening sound, their species' expression of despair. The Vorthack representatives exchanged rapid mandible clicks, their equivalent of panicked whispering. This is economic suicide, declared Merchant Prince Veltar of the Trade Federation. Human commerce represents 34% of all galactic economic activity. Withdrawal will crash markets across 16 sectors. That's your problem now, Sarah replied coldly. Human merchants will continue trading with species that offer fair deals, but we're done subsidizing galactic commerce with below-market rates and charity shipments. Chancellor Moore Dunn's exoskeleton darkened, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. The strategic implications are catastrophic. Without human intervention capabilities, dozens of ongoing conflicts will escalate. Border disputes will become wars. Pirate activity will surge. Then, perhaps it's time for other species to develop their own intervention capabilities, Admiral Jackson suggested. For 3 centuries, you've let your military forces atrophy because you knew humans would handle any real threats. Maybe necessity will motivate innovation. Elder Vorash of the Ancient Ones projected confusion and concern. But who will respond when the next existential threat emerges? The Void Hunters still prowl the dark spaces. The Machine Collective continues its expansion. The Devourers may return. Not our problem, Sarah stated flatly. Earth will defend Earth. If the galaxy faces extinction-level threats, you'll have to face them without expecting humans to lead the charge. The implications of this statement sent waves of fear through the assembly. Every species present had relied on human intervention during some crisis. The thermal kingdoms owed their existence to human firefighting techniques that saved their sun cities. The Aquatic Alliance had been rescued from environmental collapse by human water purification technology. Countless smaller species have been saved from conquest, plague, or natural disaster through human intervention. Representative Thaimai of the Consensus Worlds attempted one final appeal. Surely the humans understand that withdrawal will harm human colonies as well. Many worlds depend on galactic infrastructure. Our colonies have been instructed to become self-sufficient or evacuate to human space, Dr. Patel replied. We've spent decades building redundant systems precisely because we couldn't trust the Council to maintain critical infrastructure. Sarah looked around the assembly one final time, her gaze taking in the thousands of alien faces staring back at her in shock, anger, or desperation. This council had the opportunity to become a true partnership of equals. Instead, it became a collection of dependents expecting humans to solve every problem while taking credit for the solutions. We're done being your unpaid peacekeepers. With that, she turned and walked toward the exit, the rest of the human delegation following in perfect formation. Their footsteps echoed in the stunned silence of the chamber, each step marking the end of an era. As the massive doors sealed behind the departing humans, the reality of their situation began to sink in. For the first time in 3 centuries, the galaxy would have to face its problems without human intervention, innovation, or sacrifice. The Golden Age was over. The Age of Consequences was about to begin. Chancellor Mordun stared at the sealed doors for a long moment before turning to address the assembly. Emergency protocols are now in effect. All sectors must immediately assess their security and infrastructure dependencies. We have perhaps days before the first crises begin to manifest. But even as he spoke, reports were already flooding in from across the galaxy. Without human patrols, pirate raids had begun within hours of the announcement. Trade routes were being attacked. Border conflicts were escalating. The galaxy's artificial peace, maintained by human strength and vigilance, was already beginning to crumble. The departure of humanity signaled more than just political change. It marked the beginning of a dark age that would test whether galactic civilization could survive without the species that had unknowingly become its foundation. Hashtag the departure of humans signaled doom for the Galactic Council. 3 standard weeks had passed since the human delegation walked out of the council chambers, and the galaxy was already burning. Commander Zalthek of the Hegemony Defense Force stared at the tactical display in his command center, watching red warning indicators spread across the holographic map like a plague. 17 different sectors were reporting major security incidents. Pirates were raiding with impunity. Border skirmishes were escalating into full conflicts. And, most disturbing of all, distress signals were coming from systems that hadn't seen violence in over a century. Status report, he demanded, his mandibles clicking with barely contained frustration. Lieutenant Hexdye, a younger member of his species, consulted the data streams flowing across multiple screens. The frontier worlds are reporting a 340% increase in pirate activity. The Nexus trade route has been completely shut down after 3 major convoy attacks. Border dispute between the Thermal Kingdoms and the Crystal Confederation has escalated to orbital bombardment. Zalthek's exoskeleton darkened further. What about our response fleets? Sir, that's the problem. Our rapid response protocols were designed around human backup. Our ships aren't equipped for sustained, independent operations. We're discovering massive gaps in our capabilities. The truth was becoming painfully clear to military commanders across the galaxy. For 3 centuries, they had operated knowing that human intervention forces were available as backup. Their own forces had been designed for local defense and peacekeeping, not for handling major crises. The humans had been their ace in the hole, their ultimate solution for any problem too big for conventional forces. Now that safety net was gone, and the galaxy's military forces were revealing themselves to be woefully inadequate. Captain Sylvana of the Aquatic Alliance Navy was learning this lesson firsthand as she stared at the burning hulk of what had been the civilian transport Peaceful Current. Her ship, the Deep Tide, was the most advanced vessel in the Alliance fleet, but it was designed for patrol work and rescue operations, not combat. Captain, her communications officer reported, voice tight with strain, we're receiving multiple distress calls from the Meridian shipping lane. At least 6 more transports under attack by the Crimson Nebula pirates. Sylvana felt the water in her breathing apparatus grow cold with dread. The Crimson Nebula had been a minor nuisance for decades, easily contained by the occasional human patrol. Now, with no human rapid response teams available, they had grown bold. How long until the hegemony reinforcements arrive? She asked. 18 standard hours, Captain. By then, They'll all be dead or captured, Sylvana finished grimly. Helm, set course for the shipping lane. Best possible speed. Captain, we're not equipped for this. The pirates have been targeting military vessels, specifically. Our ship isn't designed for heavy combat. Sylvana's gills fluttered with resignation. Then we improvise, because there's no one else coming to help. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as species discovered the harsh reality of their dependence on human intervention. The elegant Zephyrian scouts, designed for reconnaissance and diplomacy, were being pressed into combat roles they couldn't handle. The massive Vorthack dreadnoughts, impressive but slow, were finding themselves outmaneuvered by enemies who had adapted their tactics to counter human responses, not traditional galactic military doctrine. In the council chambers, emergency sessions have been running continuously since the human departure. The massive assembly hall, once a symbol of galactic unity, now felt more like a tomb as representatives struggled to coordinate responses to cascading crises. Chancellor Mordun hadn't left the chamber in days. His normally pristine ceremonial armor was dulled with exhaustion as he reviewed the latest reports. Summary of current situations, he demanded. Dr. Kethmore materialized his crystalline form at the central podium, his usually calm demeanor showing stress fractures. Major conflicts have erupted in 17 sectors. The Rim Wars have reignited as the savage clans realize no human intervention is coming. The Machine Collective has begun expanding again, absorbing 3 systems in the past week. Most critically, seismic instabilities on Fexnari Prime threaten to destroy the planet's core, and without human geological expertise, the planet will be uninhabitable within months, Chancellor Mordun finished. 40 billion lives. We've reached out to other species with geological expertise, Dr. Kethmore continued, but none have the advanced stabilization technology the humans developed. The Earthers pioneered planetary engineering on a scale we simply never matched. Representative Clix phased into the discussion, his form more unstable than usual. The Quantum Syndicate has been analyzing human methodologies. Their approach to problem-solving appears to be fundamentally different from our own. They engage in what they call outside-the-box thinking, considering solutions we would never contemplate. Elaborate, Mordun ordered. When the crystalline plague threatened the Nexari, every galactic expert concluded it was impossible to cure. The silicon-based nature of the disease made conventional medical approaches useless. Human scientists approached the problem by treating it as a computer virus rather than a biological pathogen. They developed quantum phase therapy by combining medical knowledge with information technology principles. Elder Vorash of the Ancient Ones projected understanding. The humans' hybrid thinking. They synthesize knowledge across disciplines in ways we never considered. Precisely. And that cognitive approach can't simply be copied. It appears to be cultural, possibly even genetic. Humans seem to naturally question assumptions that we accept as fundamental. The implications were staggering. It wasn't just that humans had better technology or stronger military forces. Their entire way of thinking was different, allowing them to find solutions that other species couldn't even conceive. Chancellor Mordun's mandibles clicked in thought. What about the colonies? Surely some humans remain in galactic space. We've attempted to contact human colonies throughout the galaxy, reported Ambassador Velmai of the Diplomatic Corps. Most have either evacuated or gone completely autonomous. The few that responded stated they're under orders not to provide assistance to galactic authorities. Orders from whom? Apparently, the human withdrawal wasn't just political. It was comprehensive. Earth Command issued strict non-intervention directives to all human populations in galactic space. As if summoned by their conversation, the chamber's communications system activated. A holographic projection appeared at the center of the room, showing the familiar figure of Admiral Jackson. Unlike his previous appearances in the chamber, he was now wearing the deep blue uniform of the Earth Defense Force rather than his Galactic Council regalia. Honored delegates, his voice carried across the chamber. I'm transmitting this message in response to the numerous requests for human assistance that Earth Command has received in recent days. The chamber fell silent. Hope and desperation warred in the faces of thousands of alien representatives. Let me be absolutely clear, Jackson continued. The United Earth Federation maintains its position of non-intervention in galactic affairs. We will not be responding to military crises, providing technological assistance, or offering scientific expertise to the Galactic Council or any of its member species. A collective sound of dismay rose from the assembly. However, Jackson's expression softened slightly. Earth remains open to diplomatic contact with individual species who wish to establish bilateral relationships based on mutual respect and fair exchange. We are not at war with the galaxy. We simply refuse to continue our role as its unpaid guardian. Representative Thaimai of the Consensus Worlds stood quickly. Admiral, surely you understand the catastrophic consequences of human withdrawal. Innocent lives are being lost. Entire civilizations are at risk. Jackson's image regarded her steadily. With respect, Representative, innocent lives have always been at risk. The difference is that for 3 centuries, humans died to protect them, while the species responsible for those innocent lives invested nothing in their defense. Perhaps if galactic civilization had spent the last few hundred years developing its own capabilities instead of relying on human charity, those innocent lives would be better protected. But the humanitarian crises will have to be resolved by the galaxy's humanitarian organizations. Earth's aid was never permanent. We always intended for our assistance to help other species develop their own capabilities. Instead, it created dependency. Chancellor Mordun stepped forward, his massive form imposing even in holographic form. Admiral, I speak for many when I say we acknowledge past mistakes. Surely we can negotiate terms for renewed cooperation. Jackson was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight of finality. Chancellor, the time for negotiations was 300 years ago, or 200, or 100, or even 50 years ago. How many times did human representatives propose power-sharing agreements? How many times did we suggest other species take larger roles in galactic security? How many times were we told that humans were too eager to act, that galactic problems required careful consideration by the established powers? The silence was deafening because every alien in the chamber knew he was right. The galaxy chose to treat humans as a convenient tool rather than as equal partners. Now you're learning what it means to function without that tool. Earth will not be coming to save you this time. Figure it out yourselves. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in shocked silence. In the minutes that followed, the reality of their situation truly sank in. Reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. The frontier worlds were preparing to surrender to pirate fleets rather than face annihilation. The Nexus trade routes were permanently shutting down. The Machine Collective had declared its intention to absorb the entire quantum sector. Most shocking of all, distress signals were coming from core worlds that hadn't faced external threats in millennia. The galaxy's artificial peace, maintained by human strength and vigilance, was crumbling with terrifying speed. Dr. Vexhai of the Mentari Collective projected her thoughts into the chamber. Analysis indicates cascade failure of galactic stability within 6 standard months if current trends continue. Multiple civilizations face extinction-level threats. What about joint operations, suggested Representative Clicks. Combining our forces, pooling resources. Attempted, reported Admiral Quextar of the combined fleets. Coordination protocols are incompatible. Command structures conflict. Most critically, no species possesses the tactical doctrine necessary for rapid crisis response. We've been observers of human operations for so long that we never learned to replace them. Elder Seraph High of the Ancient Ones spoke for the first time in days, her voice carrying the weight of eons. The Council faces a choice. We can continue attempting to maintain the old order without the foundation that made it possible, or we can admit that fundamental change is necessary. What kind of change? Chancellor Mordun asked. The kind that should have happened centuries ago. Each species must become responsible for its own survival. The age of collective security guaranteed by human sacrifice is over. The age of individual species self-reliance has begun. The implications were staggering. Species that had relied on human protection would need to rapidly develop their own military capabilities or face conquest. Civilizations that had depended on human innovation would need to accelerate their scientific development or fall behind. The comfortable, stable galactic order was about to be replaced by a much harsher reality. As the emergency session continued into the night cycle, one thing became clear to every representative present. The galaxy was about to learn whether it could survive without the humans who had unknowingly held it together for 3 centuries. The early signs were not encouraging. Hashtag the departure of humans signaled doom for the Galactic Council. 6 months had passed since the human withdrawal, and the galaxy was learning hard lessons about the difference between watching heroes work and being heroes themselves. Captain Mexral of the newly formed Hegemony Crisis Response Fleet stared at the tactical display, showing the aftermath of their first major independent operation. The rescue of the mining colony on Zirian 7 had technically been successful. They had evacuated 70% of the population before the unstable star finally collapsed. But the remaining 30%, nearly 2 million souls, were gone because the Hegemony fleet lacked the specialized equipment and expertise that human rescue teams would have brought to the operation. Status report on the evacuees, he ordered, his mandibles clicking with barely controlled emotion. Medical teams are overwhelmed, sir, reported his aide, Lieutenant Veltar. We have refugees from 17 different species, each with unique environmental and medical needs. Our ships weren't designed for long-term, multi-species habitation. Mexral's exoskeleton darkened with frustration. Human ships had been marvels of adaptability, capable of supporting dozens of different life forms simultaneously. The Hegemony had never needed to develop such technology because they had always assumed human vessels would handle multi-species operations. And the next crisis? The Void Hunters have been detected in the Outer Rim again, sir. 3 systems have gone dark in the past week. The Void Hunters. For 2 centuries, their emergence from dark space had been a recurring nightmare, resolved only by human tactical genius and willingness to engage in battles that other species found too costly. Now they were back, and this time, there would be no Admiral Chun leading a human task force to drive them into retreat. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, similar scenes of inadequacy and desperation were playing out as species discovered just how much they had depended on human intervention. On the aquatic world of Tidal Nash, President Silmara of the Aquatic Alliance faced a crisis that would have been routine 6 months earlier. The orbital platforms that regulated the planet's massive tide systems were failing, threatening to drown coastal cities housing billions of inhabitants. The platforms had been designed with human engineering principles and required specific maintenance protocols that the Alliance had never bothered to learn. Status on the repair efforts? She asked her chief engineer. Engineer Quavrin's gills fluttered with distress. We've managed to stabilize 3 of the 12 platforms, but we're working from incomplete schematics. The humans never shared their full engineering databases, and what we have is fragmentary. Time until total system failure. 6 weeks, possibly less. Without the tidal regulators, the interaction between our 3 moons will create waves over 200 meters high. Every coastal city will be destroyed. Silmara felt the water in her environment suit grow cold. What about asking other species for assistance? The Crystalline Confederation has engineering expertise, but their silicon-based technology is incompatible with our water-based systems. The thermal kingdoms work with heat and energy, not hydromechanics. Every species developed expertise in their own environmental niche. Only humans learned to work across all environments. The terrible irony was becoming clear to leaders across the galaxy. Each species had evolved to excel in their specific environment and had developed technology suited to their particular needs. Humans, coming from a world with diverse climates and environments, had learned to adapt and work across all conditions. Their technology was designed to function in the vacuum of space, the crushing depths of ocean worlds, the searing heat of stellar forges, and the frozen waste of ice planets. No other species had needed such versatility because humans had always been available to handle cross-environmental challenges. In the glittering spires of the Zephyrian homeworld, Chancellor Whisper faced a different, but equally devastating problem. The delicate atmosphere processors that maintained their gas giant cities were being sabotaged by the Crimson Nebula pirates, who had grown bold enough to attack core worlds. Our defense fleets are elegant but fragile, reported Admiral Winsong. They were designed for ceremonial displays and peaceful patrols. The pirates have adapted military-grade weaponry specifically designed to counter our atmospheric vessels. Surely we can modify our designs. Not quickly enough. Our engineering philosophy emphasizes beauty and harmony with natural forces. The pirates use brute force tactics that our technology simply wasn't designed to counter. We need defensive systems based on completely different principles. Chancellor Whisper's gaseous form shimmered with distress. And where do we acquire such knowledge? That's the problem. Only humans developed military technology based on multiple strategic philosophies. They studied everyone's tactics and created hybrid approaches that could counter any threat. We never had to learn because they handled military innovation for the entire galaxy. The pattern was repeating everywhere. The thermal kingdoms, masters of energy manipulation, were helpless when their solar collectors were being destroyed by enemies using kinetic weapons. The Crystal Confederation, experts in silicon-based technology, couldn't counter biological weapons that were devastating their information networks. Each species was discovering that their specialized expertise, while impressive in its own domain, was inadequate for the complex, multidimensional threats facing galactic civilization. In the council chambers, emergency sessions had become a permanent fixture. The massive assembly hall, once a symbol of galactic unity, now felt more like a morgue as representatives reported one catastrophe after another. Chancellor Mordun looked older than his considerable years as he reviewed the latest casualty reports. Summarized the current situation, he requested wearily. Dr. Kethmore's crystalline form flickered with stress patterns as he accessed the galactic data networks. Confirmed extinction-level events in progress on 14 worlds. The machine collective has expanded by 18 systems, encountering no effective resistance. The Void Hunters have established permanent beachheads in the Outer Rim. Piracy has increased by 847% galaxy-wide. Most critically, added Representative Thaimai, our analysis suggests cascade civilization failure within the next standard year. Interdependent systems are collapsing faster than we can adapt. What about the joint military initiatives? Asked Chancellor Mordun. Admiral Quextar of the combined fleets stepped forward, his usual confidence replaced by grim resignation. Tactical coordination between our forces is proving impossible. Human military doctrine served as a universal translator between our different strategic philosophies. Without that common framework, our fleets are more likely to accidentally fire on each other than coordinate effective responses. The Nexus trade routes have collapsed entirely, reported Merchant Prince Veltar. Without human convoy protection and rapid response capability, insurance rates for galactic shipping have become prohibitive. Commerce between sectors has dropped to pre-space flight levels. Elder Vorash of the Ancient Ones projected her ancient wisdom into the chamber. We are learning the true cost of our complacency. For 3 centuries, we allowed ourselves to become dependent on a single species for solutions to every major challenge. Now we face the consequences of that dependency. But surely there must be alternatives, pleaded Representative Clicks, his quantum form fluctuating with distress. Other species with similar capabilities. None exist, stated Dr. Vexhai of the Mentari Collective flatly. Our analysis confirms that human cognitive patterns are unique in their ability to synthesize knowledge across disciplines and cultures. Their hybrid thinking cannot be replicated by any known species. The truth was becoming painfully clear. Humans weren't just another species with useful technology and military strength. Their entire approach to problem-solving was fundamentally different from the rest of galactic civilization. Where other species developed deep expertise in narrow fields, humans developed broad competency across multiple disciplines. Where other species relied on traditional approaches proven by their ancestors, humans constantly innovated and adapted. Most critically, humans had developed the ability to think like other species, understanding their strengths and weaknesses well enough to coordinate effective multi-species responses to galactic challenges. No other species had ever needed to develop such capabilities because they had always been part of single-species civilizations before joining the galactic community. There is one possibility, Chancellor Mordun said quietly, the words seeming to pain him. Direct supplication. Formal acknowledgement of our dependence, and request for renewed human assistance. The chamber fell silent. For proud species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years before human arrival, the suggestion was almost unthinkable. To formally admit their inadequacy To beg for help from a species they had long considered junior partners despite their contributions would be the ultimate humiliation. The humans made their position clear, reminded Elder Sci-Fi. They will not return to their previous role under any circumstances. But perhaps new arrangements could be negotiated, suggested Ambassador Velmi hopefully. Equal partnership, shared authority, formal recognition of human contributions. Representative Thaimai's voice carried bitter irony. Now we offer equal partnership. After 3 centuries of treating them as convenient tools, now we offer them what they requested from the beginning. Because now we understand the cost of refusing, Chancellor Mordaunt admitted. But the question remains, is it too late? As if in answer to his question, the chamber's emergency alert system activated. The massive screens around the assembly hall lit up with incoming reports from across the galaxy. New crises were emerging faster than they could be cataloged. The Void Hunters had begun systematic extermination of species in the Outer Rim. The Machine Collective was approaching core worlds, and, most terrifying of all, astronomical observations had detected the return of the Devourers from deep space. The Devourers, the galaxy's ultimate nightmare, beings of pure destruction that consumed entire systems, transforming matter itself into more of their kind. The last time they had appeared, 2 centuries ago, it had taken the combined scientific genius of humanity and the desperate cooperation of every galactic species to drive them back into the void. Now, they were returning, and the galaxy that had barely survived their previous incursion was weaker, more divided, and lacking the leadership that had made victory possible. Chancellor Mordaunt stared at the tactical display, showing the approaching threat, and realized that their time for debate had run out. The galaxy faced extinction, and their only hope lay in convincing humanity to forgive 3 centuries of exploitation and return to save the civilization that had taken their sacrifice for granted. The question was whether human compassion could overcome human resentment, and whether there was still time to prevent the complete collapse of galactic civilization. The departure of humans signaled doom for the Galactic Council. The Devourer fleet stretched across 3 star systems, their dark vessels consuming matter itself and converting it into more of their kind. Deep space observations showed their trajectory leading directly toward the galactic core, where trillions of lives hung in the balance. Chancellor Mordaunt stood before the emergency assembly, knowing that the next decision would determine whether galactic civilization survived or perished entirely. The Devourers will reach the outer core in 37 standard days, Dr. Kethmore reported, his crystalline form crackling with stress-induced fractures. Current expansion rate suggests they have grown significantly stronger during their time in the void. Previous mathematical models for containment are no longer valid. The assembly hall buzzed with frightened whispers in 1,000 languages. 2 centuries ago, when the Devourers last emerged, it had taken humanity's greatest scientific minds working in perfect coordination with every galactic species to develop the quantum resonance weapons capable of driving them back. The solution had required not just human innovation, but human ability to synthesize the unique capabilities of every species into a unified response. Status of our defensive preparations? Chancellor Mordaunt asked, though he already knew the answer would be devastating. Admiral Quextar's report confirmed their worst fears. Combined fleet strength stands at approximately 40% of our capabilities during the last Devourer incursion. More critically, we lack the technological integration that made our previous victory possible. The quantum resonance weapons were built using hybrid human-galactic technology. Our current engineering capabilities cannot recreate them. What about the original weapons? Asked Representative Clix desperately. Destroyed during the post-war demilitarization, Admiral Quextar replied bitterly. The Council voted to eliminate all Devourer-era weapons as unnecessarily provocative to peaceful galactic relations. The humans advised against this decision, but were overruled. The bitter irony hung in the air like a toxic cloud. In their eagerness to return to peaceful complacency after the Devourer threat was eliminated, the galactic species had dismantled the very weapons that might save them now. Only humanity had argued for maintaining defensive capabilities against future threats, and only humanity had been ignored. Elder Vorash of the Ancient Ones projected her thoughts into the chamber, her mental voice heavy with the weight of eons. We face the consequences of our own short-sightedness. The humans warned us that the Devourers would return. They advised maintaining readiness. We chose to believe the threat was permanently eliminated because it was more comfortable than acknowledging the need for constant vigilance. Current projections for resistance without human involvement? Chancellor Mordun asked. Dr. Vexhai of the Mentari Collective materialized her energy form, pulsing with grim calculations. Analysis indicates total galactic extinction within 18 months of Devourer contact with core worlds. Without quantum resonance weapons, conventional military forces will only delay their advance, not stop it. The terrible mathematics of their situation were undeniable. The galaxy's combined military might, impressive as it seemed, was fundamentally inadequate to face an enemy that consumed matter itself. Only the exotic physics of quantum resonance technology could disrupt the Devourer's molecular conversion processes, and only humanity possessed the hybrid thinking necessary to recreate such weapons. Then, we have no choice, Chancellor Mordun said heavily. Formal supplication to the human government, complete acknowledgement of our dependence, and formal request for assistance. The humans have already refused all previous requests, reminded Ambassador Velmai. What makes this different? Scale, replied Elder Seraphai grimly. Previous crises threatened individual species or sectors. This threatens the extinction of all galactic civilization, including human colonies and trading partners. Even in isolation, humanity cannot survive if the galaxy burns. Chancellor Mordun activated the long-range communications array, knowing that this transmission would either save galactic civilization or confirm its doom. The signal would take several hours to reach Earth, and the response might determine the fate of trillions of lives. The message was simple, direct, and utterly humiliating for species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. To the United Earth Federation, the Galactic Council formally acknowledges complete dependence on human assistance for survival of galactic civilization. The Devourers have returned in greater numbers. Without human leadership and innovation, all galactic species face extinction within 2 standard years. We formally request emergency assistance and are prepared to negotiate any terms necessary for human involvement. While they waited for Earth's response, reports continued flooding in from across the galaxy, painting a picture of escalating chaos that made the Devourer threat even more terrifying. The Machine Collective had accelerated its expansion, apparently aware that galactic defenses were at their weakest. Pirate fleets had grown bold enough to attack major trade hubs. Most critically, several species were beginning to fragment internally as local populations lost faith in their government's ability to protect them. Captain Sylvana of the Aquatic Alliance watched her homeworld's orbital platforms fail one by one, knowing that her people had perhaps days before the tidal apocalypse began. Her rescue fleets were overwhelmed, her engineers were working with incomplete knowledge, and her military forces were scattered across a dozen crisis zones. Captain, her communications officer reported, we're receiving transmission from the human colony ship New Horizon. They're requesting permission to assist with the orbital platform crisis. Sylvana felt her gills flutter with desperate hope. Patch them through immediately. The holographic image that appeared showed Captain Maria Santos, a human engineer whose colony ship had been in the sector when the crisis began. Captain Sylvana, we've been monitoring your situation. Our ship has the technical capabilities to stabilize your orbital platforms, but we'll need full access to your control systems. Captain Santos, I thought Earth Command had issued strict non-intervention orders. Santos's expression was grim. Official policy is non-intervention in galactic politics. But we're not talking about politics anymore, are we? We're talking about billions of innocent lives and the possible end of civilization. Some things are more important than politics. You're willing to risk court-martial? I'm willing to risk whatever it takes to prevent genocide. My engineers are standing by. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as individual humans, watching the cascading collapse of galactic civilization, began making personal choices that contradicted their government's official policies. Human colony ships were providing disaster relief. Human research stations were sharing critical technical data. Human patrol vessels were engaging pirate fleets despite orders to maintain neutrality. Admiral Jackson, monitoring these reports from Earth Command, found himself facing an impossible situation. Official policy was clear: no intervention in galactic affairs. But unofficial reality was equally clear. Human personnel throughout galactic space were refusing to watch civilizations die when they had the power to help. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving formal resignation letters from 347 human military officers and 1,892 civilian personnel in galactic space. They're stating they cannot, in good conscience, follow non-intervention orders while watching genocide unfold." Jackson stared at the reports, understanding the impossible position his people faced. They had been raised with human values of compassion and mutual aid. Asking them to watch civilizations burn while possessing the ability to help was asking them to abandon everything that made them human. Status on the formal supplication from the Galactic Council: received and under review by the Earth Senate. Preliminary analysis suggests they're prepared to offer virtually any concessions in exchange for assistance. And the Devourer situation? Astronomical confirms their presence and trajectory. At current expansion rate, they'll reach Earth space within 5 years, regardless of what happens to the rest of the galaxy. The strategic reality was inescapable. Even if humanity maintained perfect isolation, the Devourers would eventually reach human space. Earth's defensive capabilities were formidable, but they had been designed to protect a single species in a limited region of space. Fighting the Devourers required the combined resources and knowledge of the entire galaxy working in perfect coordination. Isolation wasn't just morally questionable, it was strategically suicidal. The Earth Senate's response, when it came, reflected this harsh reality. President Chun addressed both the Galactic Council and the human population simultaneously, her words carrying the weight of species survival. To the Galactic Council, the United Earth Federation acknowledges your formal supplication and recognizes the extinction-level threat facing all galactic civilization. After extensive deliberation, we have decided to provide emergency assistance under specific conditions. Hope flared in the council chambers, but President Chin's next words tempered that hope with hard reality. First, this assistance is temporary and limited to the Devourer crisis. Earth will not resume its previous role as galactic caretaker. Second, all human personnel will operate under Earth Command authority, not Council oversight. Third, post-crisis, the galaxy must demonstrate it has developed independent capabilities for future threats. Fourth, fair compensation for human assistance will be negotiated separately, with each species requesting aid. Most importantly, President Chun continued, this assistance comes with full recognition that the galaxy failed to learn the lessons of the last 3 centuries. We are not saving you because you deserve salvation. We are saving you because allowing galactic extinction would ultimately threaten human survival as well. Consider this humanity's final gift to a galaxy that never learned to stand on its own. The transmission ended, leaving the council chambers in stunned silence. They had received the help they desperately needed, but with it came the bitter acknowledgement that they had failed as galactic stewards. Humanity was returning not as partners or equals, but as reluctant saviors cleaning up a mess they had warned against but been powerless to prevent. As human ships began emerging from hyperspace across the galaxy, carrying the technologies and expertise needed to coordinate anti-devourer defenses, one thing became clear to everyone watching. This would indeed be humanity's final intervention. Whether the galaxy survived or perished, the age of human guardianship was ending forever. The question now was whether galactic civilization could learn to survive on its own before it was too late. The departure of humans signaled doom for the Galactic Council. The Battle of the Core Nebula would be remembered as either the last victory of galactic civilization or its final stand. Admiral Jackson stood on the bridge of the UEF Defiance, watching tactical displays that showed the largest military operation in galactic history unfolding across dozens of star systems. Human command ships coordinated fleets from 100 different species, their crews working desperately to forge effective fighting forces from alien vessels that had never been designed to work together. Status report, Jackson demanded, his weathered face reflecting the strain of 3 months of continuous combat operations. Quantum resonance weapons are online across all sectors, reported Commander Chun, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. The Zephyrian atmospheric fighters are struggling with the void environment, but their reconnaissance capabilities are invaluable. Thermal Kingdom energy platforms are providing excellent fire support, though coordination with Aquatic Alliance naval forces remains problematic. Jackson nodded grimly. The challenges were exactly what humanity had warned about for decades. Each species had developed military capabilities suited to their own environment and tactical philosophy. Integrating them into a coherent fighting force required constant human mediation and translation between incompatible systems. Devourer response to the quantum resonance attacks. They're adapting faster than projected. The new generation shows resistance to frequencies that were effective during the initial engagements. Dr. Patel's research teams are working on modifications, but we're essentially in an arms race against an enemy that evolves in real time. The terrible reality of fighting the Devourers was becoming clear to every species involved. Unlike conventional enemies with fixed capabilities, the Devourers learned from each encounter, adapting their molecular structure to counter whatever weapons proved effective against them. Only constant innovation could stay ahead of their adaptation cycle, and innovation required the hybrid thinking that humanity brought to galactic problem-solving. Deep in the research sections of the human science vessels, Dr. Patel worked alongside alien scientists whose species had contributed crucial elements to the quantum resonance technology. The Crystalline Confederation's silicon-based processors could calculate quantum frequencies at impossible speeds. The Mentari Collective's energy manipulation allowed for precise calibration of resonance weapons. The Ancient One's deep understanding of universal forces provided theoretical frameworks for exotic physics. But it was human synthesis of these diverse capabilities that made the weapons functional. The next frequency modification is ready, Dr. Patel announced to her mixed species team. But I estimate we have perhaps 6 engagements before the Devourers adapt to this approach entirely. We need a fundamentally different strategy. The crystalline scientist, Dr. Vexanael, pulsed with frustrated patterns. Human innovation has always been our advantage. Without continuous human scientific leadership, this becomes a war of attrition we cannot win. Which is exactly why this has to be the last time, Dr. Patel replied quietly. The galaxy has to learn to innovate on its own, or the next crisis will destroy everyone, including Earth. Meanwhile, on the command bridge, Admiral Jackson was learning hard lessons about the limits of even human capabilities. The Devourer fleet had proven larger and more adaptable than anyone had anticipated. Worse, their time in the void had taught them new strategies for exploiting the weaknesses of coordinated galactic defenses. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, the Devourers are using our own coordination protocols against us. They're jamming human command frequencies specifically, trying to disrupt our ability to coordinate multi-species operations. Jackson's expression darkened. They've learned that removing human coordination collapses galactic military effectiveness. Exactly. Without our translation between alien tactical systems, the combined fleets become a liability to each other. The Devourers are essentially using galactic diversity against galactic unity. It was a sobering lesson in the double-edged nature of humanity's role in galactic affairs. Their ability to coordinate diverse species was both a tremendous strength and a critical vulnerability. The galaxy's dependence on human mediation meant that disrupting human capabilities could instantly neutralize the advantages of galactic cooperation. Alternative command structures. We've been training alien officers in human coordination protocols, but the learning curve is steep. The cognitive patterns required for multi-species military coordination don't come naturally to most species. Jackson realized they were facing the fundamental problem that had driven humanity to withdraw in the first place. Even in the middle of an extinction-level crisis, the galaxy was learning that developing independent capabilities was far more difficult than simply relying on human solutions. In the council chambers, emergency sessions continued around the clock as representatives struggled to coordinate support for the military operations while simultaneously planning for a post-crisis galaxy that would have to function without human guardianship. Chancellor Mordun reviewed reports from the battle zones, each one reinforcing the terrible lesson of galactic dependence. Sector 7 reports successful Devourer repulsion, but only due to real-time human tactical coordination. Sector 12 suffered catastrophic losses when communication failures disrupted human command oversight. Sector 15 achieved tactical victory through innovative deployment of thermal kingdom energy platforms, but the innovation came from human strategic analysis of thermal capabilities. Elder Vorash projected her ancient wisdom into the chamber. Every victory demonstrates our continued dependence. Every success proves that we have learned nothing from our previous failures. But we are learning, insisted Representative Thaimai desperately. Our forces are adapting to human coordination methods. Our scientists are beginning to understand hybrid innovation approaches. Too slowly, replied Dr. Kethmore bluntly. Analysis indicates that achieving true operational independence would require at least 2 centuries of intensive development. The Devourers will not wait for our education to be complete. The bitter mathematics of their situation were undeniable. Even if they successfully repelled the Devourer invasion, the galaxy would emerge more dependent on human expertise than ever before. The crisis was teaching them how much they didn't know, not how to become self-sufficient. Then came the breakthrough that changed everything. Dr. Kethmore's crystalline form suddenly blazed with excitement as new data flooded through his processors. Chancellor, we're receiving reports from Sector 9. The Aquatic Alliance and Crystal Confederation forces achieved independent victory against the Devourer Advance Group. The chamber fell silent. Independent victory meant success without human tactical coordination. Details, Chancellor Mordun demanded. Captain Sylvana of the Alliance combined her forces with Confederation crystal ships in a completely novel formation. They used aquatic mobility to deliver crystalline computational power directly to Devourer vessels, allowing real-time adaptation to enemy molecular changes. Most significantly, they developed this approach independently, without human oversight. Hope flickered through the chamber for the first time in months. More reports coming in. Dr. Kethmore continued excitedly. The thermal kingdoms have successfully modified their energy platforms for void combat using techniques learned from observing human innovation methods. The Zephyrian scouts have developed new reconnaissance protocols by studying human multi-environmental approaches. Elder Seraphai projected understanding. The galaxy is finally beginning to learn, not just to copy human solutions, but to apply human methodologies to develop their own approaches. The pattern continued over the following weeks as the tide of battle slowly began to turn. Species throughout the galaxy started demonstrating genuine innovation rather than simple adaptation of human technologies. More importantly, they began coordinating with each other directly rather than requiring human mediation. Admiral Jackson watched these developments with mixed emotions. On one hand, independent galactic capability was exactly what humanity had always hoped to achieve. On the other hand, it was emerging only under the pressure of near extinction, and might disappear once the immediate crisis passed. Admiral, Commander Chen reported, we're seeing unprecedented levels of interspecies coordination developing organically. The Quantum Syndicate is sharing dimensional technologies with the machine rebels who escaped collective control. The Ancient Ones are teaching universal force manipulation to younger species. Most remarkably, they're doing it without human facilitation, because they finally understand the cost of not doing it, Jackson replied. The question is whether they'll maintain these behaviors once the Devourers are gone. The final battle came sooner than anyone expected. The Devourer core fleet, recognizing that their adaptive advantages were being neutralized by genuine galactic innovation, launched a desperate assault on the core worlds, hoping to consume enough matter to achieve critical mass for galactic conversion. The defense of the core became a test of whether the galaxy had truly learned to stand without human guardianship. As Admiral Jackson watched the tactical displays, he saw something that 3 centuries of human intervention had never achieved: genuine galactic cooperation. Species that had never worked together were coordinating complex operations. Technologies that had never been combined were creating unprecedented capabilities. Most importantly, innovation was emerging from alien minds working together rather than from human synthesis of alien capabilities. Admiral, Commander Chen's voice carried wonder. They're doing it. Real coordination, real innovation, real independence. They don't need us anymore. Jackson smiled for the first time in months. That was always the point. The galaxy just needed to learn that it could survive on its own. The Devourer fleet was finally broken not by human leadership, but by galactic civilization that had learned to think like humans while remaining true to themselves. When the last Devourer vessel was destroyed by a weapon system created through genuine interspecies collaboration, the victory belonged to the galaxy as a whole. In the aftermath, as human forces prepared for their final withdrawal, Chancellor Mordun addressed Admiral Jackson with words that carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. Admiral, we understand now what humanity tried to teach us for 3 centuries. True strength comes not from having powerful protectors, but from becoming capable of protecting ourselves and each other. Jackson nodded. The galaxy will face other crises. But next time, you'll face them as equals working together, not as dependents waiting for rescue. As the human fleets departed for the final time, they left behind a galaxy that had finally learned the most important lesson humanity had to offer. That true civilization meant every species taking responsibility for their own survival, while freely choosing to help others do the same. The age of human guardianship was over. The age of genuine galactic civilization had begun.